All right, so the 2018 NFL Draft is already tomorrow night. That means it's time for me to give you guys my final 2018 NFL mock draft. Now, I've done 3 previous mock drafts. Now, for this one, being that it's going to be my last one, I'm going to try to make it as accurately as possible. I'm going to do what I think will go down tomorrow, include some trades, include some things that I think might be shocking to you guys, but I'm excited. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, at number 1, I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Josh Allen. Now, for a long time, it was believed that Sam Darnold was going to be the pick at number 1. You know, he has all the tools, strong arm, good footwork, very smart, a natural leader. But as the draft has gotten closer and closer, many reports have come out stating that the Cleveland Browns are leaning towards Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield. Now, I don't necessarily think that Glenn Dorsey is going to pick Baker Mayfield. I think he's a fan, right, of the bigger quarterbacks, the more prototypical sized quarterbacks. And Josh Allen has those traits. He's 6'5", weighs about 240. He's got the strongest arm by far in this draft, and he's going to have one of the strongest arms in the NFL the minute that he's drafted. So I think that Cleveland is going to favor him. It is a more questionable pick. I do think there are safer quarterbacks like Josh Rosen. I think Sam Darnold, although he has his flaws, is a safe quarterback to pick as well. Baker Mayfield. But he also has the highest upside. He has the highest potential. He has the potential to be the best quarterback in this draft if developed correctly. Cleveland has Tyrod Taylor, a guy that doesn't turn the ball over, fairly accurate with the football. So that's a good place for him to go sit down a season, maybe 2, to just develop, right, and really, harvest his tools and continue to improve his footwork, his mechanics. But I think that's going to be the pick. I don't necessarily agree with it, like I said, but I do have Cleveland taking Josh Allen at number 1. Now, at number 2, I have the New York Giants taking Saquon Barkley. Now, the Giants have publicly stated, or there have been reports, that have said that the Giants are in love with Sam Darnold, and if he's there, they're going to grab him. I don't really think that's the case by everything that we have heard from the organization itself, from the general manager. We know that they are in a win now mode. They feel that they are a few pieces away from being able to contend. They felt the same way going into last season. We all know with injuries and poor play, poor offensive line play, especially, they didn't have the best season. Now they're here picking number 2 overall, and they're looking for blue chip players, and those players include Bradley Chubb, who would fulfill a need being that they traded Jason Pierre-Paul. Saquon Barkley's a blue chip player, and Quentin Nelson, who would really be the anchor of that offensive line. So I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. I think there's too much faith in Eli Manning right now. So I think the pick is Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is the best player in this draft. He's the most explosive running back in this draft, can catch the ball out of the backfield, very shifty, very crafty, very good footwork, physically strong. And is crazy fast. So he's the most talented player in this draft. I do think he's going to be the player that makes the most immediate impact on the team that drafts him. And I think the Giants need that for Eli Manning, really a safety net, right? A guy that he can just throw the check down to and allow him to make plays. And that's Saquon Barkley. So I have Barkley going number 2 to the New York Giants. And at number 3, I have the New York Jets taking Josh Rosen. Now, there have been reports as well stating that the Jets were in love with Baker Mayfield, although Mike McGagnon has had a history of drafting these bigger quarterbacks with strong arms. For example, Christian Hackenberg, we all know that didn't pan out. So it was a little bit hard to believe as well for Mike McGagnon to fall in love with a quarterback that's just under 6'1". Although he has all the intangibles, he's the most accurate quarterback in this draft class. But I think that they are going to go Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen is the most pro-ready. This is a roster that has improved vastly from last year. They made some very good signings via free agency, and I think Josh Rosen is a guy that can go in there and compete for the starting job right away. They have Teddy Bridgewater. They have Josh McCown. Josh McCown's going to be 40 already. Teddy Bridgewater is coming off of a major knee injury 2 seasons ago that kept him out for nearly 2 entire seasons. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding those 2 guys. So the Jets is definitely a place where Josh Rosen can go compete for the starting job. Like I said, mechanically, he has the purest form. He has very good footwork. Former tennis player, very smart, can make all the throws. And like I said, is the most pro-ready. So I think it'll be a smart pick for Mike McGagnon to pick Josh Rosen. I think that will be the selection come tomorrow night. And I think it'll pan out well for the New York Jets. Now, number 4, the Browns are picking again. And I have them selecting Bradley Chubb. Now, with the number 1 overall pick last season, or last draft, I should say, they took Myles Garrett, who was by far the best player in that draft, the number 1 overall prospect on many people's board. Now, with the 4th selection, I have them going defensive end again. And pairing those two guys would allow for you to have a dominant pass rush for years and years to come. Bradley Chubb is one of the safest players in this draft, like I said earlier, alongside Saquon Barkley and Quentin Nelson. He's a guy that's dominant, rushing on the inside and on the outside, very quick off the line of scrimmage. So I think that's a great pick for Cleveland to do, to pair up those guys and solidify that defensive line. And at number 5, I actually have the Bills trading up with the Denver Broncos to number 5 to grab their quarterback, and I have them selecting Sam Darnold. You know, a lot of people were expecting Sam Darnold to be the 1st overall pick. If he does slip, if the draft does play out this way, which I very well think it can, then I think the Bills are going to jump up and take Sam Darnold. A lot of people think he's the safest quarterback in this draft. They think that he has the highest ceiling, right up there with Josh Allen. And I think the Bills are high on him as well. You know, he's a guy that can be the franchise quarterback, can be the face of a franchise, can make all the throws, right? Very creative in the pocket, very natural mover, very good body control. When the play breaks down, when the pocket collapses and there's pressure on top of him, very good improviser. You know, very good at extending plays using his legs. So I think the Bills get their guy at number 5 and Sam Darnold. Now at number 6, I actually have the Cardinals trading with the Colts to get that 6th spot to draft Baker Mayfield. Now the Colts had already traded. They were at number 3. They traded to the Jets. Now they're at 6, and I have them trading down again. They've publicly stated that they were open to trading down again to accumulate more picks because it is a roster that has a lot of holes. So I have the Cardinals going up to number 6 to get Baker Mayfield. They have Sam Bradford, but he's injury prone. I think Baker Mayfield is one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks alongside Josh Rosen. You know, very accurate with the football. You know, a lot of people including myself, love, you know, the intensity that he brings, the fire that he has in him. You know, a guy that would do any and everything to win. You know, and he can make all the throws as well. He has a strong arm. A lot of people like to, you know, underestimate his arm, you know, his arm talent. But he can make the throws. He can make the throws down the field. Very good at improvising. Does need to work on some footwork, some things in his mechanics. You know, he does have a tendency to throw off his back foot quite a bit, which could lead to turnovers at the next level. But I think that he is going to be a very good quarterback and a very, very good pickup for the Arizona Cardinals. Now at number 7, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Denzel Ward. I think Denzel Ward is the best corner in this draft. You know, had himself a heck of a combine. I think he can play in the slot if need be. He can play on the outside, although he's a little bit undersized. He has a knack for being able to find the football and being able to be disruptive. He's a guy that can go in Tampa Bay and immediately make an impact. You know, they had one of the worst secondaries in the league last year. There's a lot of room for improvement in that area, in that secondary, and I think Denzel Ward can have an impact similar to Marshawn Lattimore, who, like him, came out of Ohio State last season. So I like Denzel Ward going to Tampa Bay. I think he'll turn things around, you know, make that secondary competitive, right, and give them an opportunity to get stops and get the ball back to the offense. So I like Denzel Ward going to Tampa Bay. Minkah Fitzpatrick can be taken into consideration right there. Derwin James, the same thing, but I think they go with the best corner available to change that secondary. Now, number 8, I have the Chicago Bears drafting Quentin Nelson. Now, Quentin Nelson is one of the other safest players in this draft. He's the best offensive lineman in this draft, period. There are no flaws when you're looking at Quentin Nelson. You know, he's just a leader, right? He's fundamentally sound is what he is. You know, he's a guy that's going to be the anchor of an offensive line for years and years to come. You're talking about a guy that can make an all-pro team as a rookie. You're talking about a guy that can make the Pro Bowl as a rookie. That's the kind of potential that he has, and in many people's eyes, he is the safest pick in this draft. And I have him falling right into the lap of the Chicago Bears, who have a needed offensive line. Josh Sitton split, you know, so there's a hole at guard. And Quentin Nelson is a guy that you can just plug in, right, and he'll make an immediate impact on that offensive line. Now, number 9, I have the San Francisco 49ers selecting Roquan Smith. I think Roquan Smith is the most polished middle linebacker in this draft. He's a guy that plays very well in coverage, can make plays, you know, against the run. He has a knack for being able to find the football. He's got some wheels on him. His sideline-to-sideline playmaking ability is absolutely ridiculous. And the 49ers have a hole now. They drafted Reuben Foster last year. Obviously, there's all those off-the-field concerns, him potentially going to jail. Now, Roquan Smith is a guy that you plug in there and will make that defense better, will make that linebacking core, that linebacker group, much, much better. They're already solidified at the front with DeForest Buckner and Solomon Thomas and Eric Armstead. They signed Richard Sherman. That secondary still needs some work, so I can see Minkah Fitzpatrick being taken into consideration with this pick too. But I think that linebacking group needs the most work, especially with the question marks surrounding Reuben Foster and what is going to be going down with him, this coming season. Is he going to be available? Is he not? Is he going to be suspended? Is he going to serve jail time? So we really don't know necessarily to what extent, how serious the consequences are going to be for Reuben Foster. But if he doesn't get jail time, or if his jail time is minimalized, you can bet that one thing is for sure: he is going to serve a hefty suspension when he does come back. So Roquan Smith is the pick for the 49ers. At number 10, I have the Oakland Raiders selecting another linebacker in Tremaine Edmunds. Tremaine Edmunds is a very interesting prospect. He's still relatively young. I think he is 19 years old. I'm not sure if he turns 20 before the start of the season or if he already turned 20. I don't really remember that, but I know that he's very young. He's very raw, but he has one of the highest ceilings of any prospect in this draft. He's long, he's rangy. I think he's about 6'4". He can play inside. He's very good in coverage. You wouldn't expect a guy with his size, with his build, of his stature, to be good in coverage, but he can handle himself in coverage in one-on-one situations, lined up against tight ends and running backs. He can rush. He can rush the passer as well. He's a guy that you can line up on the outside and he can be disruptive. He's long, he's rangy, and you're looking at the Oakland Raiders, right, who need some help at the inside linebacker position. And because they released Aldon Smith, they need another guy who can go outside and rush the quarterback alongside Khalil Mack. And Tremaine Edmunds can do both. I think he has a higher ceiling than Roquan Smith, even though Roquan Smith is the more polished prospect, like I stated earlier. But I think that's a very good fit for John Gruden's defense, and I think John Gruden is a guy that's going to get the best out of him. So I like Tremaine Edmunds. I have the Raiders picking him up at number 10. Now at number 11, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting defensive tackle Vita Vea. They cut Ndamukong Suh, with all the money that they were going to owe him on his contract this coming season. They released him. He's now with the Los Angeles Rams. So they have a hole there. They have a hole at that position. The defensive end spots are solidified already with Cameron Wake and Robert Quinn, who they acquired from the Rams. So they need someone inside. And Vita Vea is a monster of a player. He's very, very good, very polished, very disruptive against the run. He's not a guy that's necessarily going to get you 8-10 sacks or be able to get to the quarterback the same way a tackle like Aaron Donald is going to be. But he's a guy that's going to be a great, run stuffer. And he's a guy that's going to be able to be disruptive, in certain passing situations and being able to cause some pressure from the interior. And you all know that quarterbacks are most disrupted when there's pressure coming in from the inside. So he's a guy that's going to be able to do that. He's 6'3", over 300 pounds, very, very big, very strong. And I think that's the pick. He fills a hole and he fills a need, and he's one of the better prospects in this entire draft. So I have the Dolphins taking Vita Vea. Now at number 12, I have the Broncos after they traded with the Buffalo Bills. I have the Broncos selecting Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, it may be a surprise if Minkah Fitzpatrick falls down this far, but I think with the amount of quarterbacks that were taken in the top 10, at least in this draft, in this mock draft, it's going to cause for some very good players to slide, and that includes Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now the 49ers could take him, the Raiders could potentially take him, but I have them addressing other needs, in this mock draft, and I have him falling to number 12 to the Denver Broncos. He's a guy that can play safety. A lot of teams and scouts and general managers think that he's going to be best at free safety, but he can play corner. I think as a freshman at Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, he played corner before playing his sophomore and junior years, at the free safety position. But you can move him around. He can play in the slot. He can play on the outside. He can roam around as a free safety and make plays that way. He can make plays against the run. You can line him up in the box, and just expect him to be able to find the football. He's very creative. You can be creative in the way you use him. You can use him in a variety of different schemes and packages, and he's very valuable. And he's a guy that can help a secondary, of the Denver Broncos that released Aqib Talib. They need as much help as they can get. to keep that defense, as dominant as it has been, in recent years. And he's a guy that I think John Elway and that organization would love to have. Now, this is where things get a little bit surprising, right? And I know that there's a legitimate chance that this probably won't happen. But then there's a chance that it could happen, And at number 3, I actually have the Washington Redskins trading with the New England Patriots. And I have the New England Patriots selecting Lamar Jackson. Now, New England has showed some, or a lot of interest in Lamar Jackson, right? There's a need at the quarterback spot, not currently, but they need a successor to Tom Brady. And they don't have that. They traded away Jimmy Garoppolo for a second-round pick to the San Francisco 49ers. And if they want to get their guy, right, if there's not a chance that they're able to trade inside the top 10 for a Sam Darnold, for a Josh Rosen and Baker Mayfield, or a Josh Allen, then you need to get the next best thing available. And Lamar Jackson will get taken by the Baltimore Ravens if he is there. He will get taken by the San Diego Chargers if the Ravens decide to pass on him, because both of those teams need a future quarterback. So if Bill Belichick loves, right, or has as much interest in Lamar Jackson as we think he does, then he's going to have to move up. And I have him moving up to number 13. He's trading anyway. The Redskins are trading away to a team that's not in their division, that's not in their conference. So it's kind of safe on both sides. So I have the New England Patriots trading up, and Lamar Jackson, I think they can develop him into a very, very good quarterback. That would be the perfect organization to kind of tame him, right, and really work on the tools that he needs, or really sharpen the tools that he already has. He can make plays with his legs, right? He just needs to work on being able to read defenses, being able to make all the throws, being able to be patient in the pocket before automatically scrambling when the pocket breaks down. And I think that's a perfect organization to really develop him into the player that he should be. So I had the Patriots doing that, selecting Lamar Jackson. At number 14, I have the Packers getting a stud in Derwin James. Now, Derwin James had a great freshman campaign, a great freshman season, very disruptive. Had a knack for being able to force turnovers and find the football. He was injured his sophomore year, missed the majority of that season. I think almost all that season except the first game. And then his junior year, right, this last season was a mess. DeAndre Francois went down with an injury in the opening game against Alabama. From then on, it was just downhill from there, But towards the end of the season, the defense did find its groove. Derwin James, showed or displayed why there was so much hype around him. He's a guy that very versatile. Although a lot of teams that he translates best as a free safety, you can load him up and you can put him in the box to make plays against the run. He's very good in coverage as well. He's a hard hitter, very explosive, and he's got size. He's about 6'3". So he's a very unique player with a unique talent that I think Green Bay would love to have, and he would make that defense a lot better. They lost their strong safety in Morgan Burnett. Hashawn Clinton-Dix is still there, and at the free safety spot. So I think if you pair those two guys up, they would be the anchor of that secondary. And the safety positions are very important positions if you want to see improvement in the secondary. And the Packers have had a relatively bad secondary for the past few years. So I think they get those two safety positions, settled, and it's going to show vast improvement this coming season if they're able to get Derwin James. So I have Derwin James at number 14 to the Green Bay Packers. At number 15, I have the Colts, who traded down with the Arizona Cardinals. I have them selecting Marcus Davenport, edge rusher out of UTSA. Now, Marcus Davenport, like Josh Allen, is a boom or bust prospect. He didn't play against legitimate competition week in and week out. But I think a lot of those questions were answered, right, during Senior Bowl. During the Senior Bowl week, they said that he started off the week kind of slow, got off to a slow start. But then as the week progressed, right, that he just started to display, just how physical he was, just how strong he was, and just how gifted he was. He's very talented. He has, a lot of potential. But fundamentally, he does have a lot of things to work on. His hand placements, the different techniques that he uses. He can't just rely, solely on. He just can't rely on his speed to be able to get around, tackles and things like that. He's gonna have to be able to work on all his techniques, on different moves, a variety of different moves to be able to rush on the outside and on the inside. He needs a lot of work. But if they are able to develop him correctly, I think he can be a very, very disruptive defensive end, for the Indianapolis Colts. I think that's a very good pick for them. I think it fills a need. And like I said, if developed correctly, he can be a very, very disruptive player. Now, at number 16, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Mike McGlinchey. I think they need help on that offensive line. Mike McGlinchey, I think, is the second best. Well, he's the best offensive tackle in this draft, in my opinion. And I think many other people would agree. They need an offensive line. They addressed a majority of their wide receiver issues, by signing Willie Snead, by signing Michael Crabtree. So Calvin Ridley could be the pick, but I think that right now with those signings and those acquisitions, I think that the offensive line, is one of the bigger needs on that team, and I have them selecting one of the better offensive linemen in this draft in Mike McGlinchey. I think it'll serve them well. Now, at number 17, I have the San Diego Chargers selecting Rashaan Evans. Now, they do need help on the offensive line, especially on the exterior, right at the tackle positions. I think Colton Miller would be a bit of a reach at number 17. So I have them selecting Rashaan Evans, who fills another need at the inside linebacker position. He's a guy very polished, right, very explosive, is very good at making plays against the run, can handle himself in coverage. I think he's actually the second most polished linebacker behind Raquan Smith. And I think if like I said, it fills a need, and it'll help that defense tremendously, who their secondary is improving with Casey Hayward. Their front is already dominant with Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa coming off the edges. I think they could use help on the interior. Deron Payne could be taken into consideration with this selection, but I have them taking Rashaan Evans and solidifying that linebacking core. Now at number 18, I have the Seattle Seahawks selecting Connor Williams. Connor Williams I think he has one of the highest ceilings for an offensive tackle in this draft. He was plagued by injuries this past season at Texas, where he played collegiately. And a lot of teams actually feel that he can move inside to guard, or that he should move inside to guard, because he doesn't necessarily have the longest reach of other offensive tackles, or as long of a reach as other tackles like Colton Miller and Mike McGlinchey. And he doesn't have the same size as both of those guys, but he can move, man. And I think he can play tackle. I do think he's capable. He's one of the better tackles in the nation at Texas. But I think if he moves inside to guard, it will serve him well. Also, but I think he can play both. I think it makes him versatile, which makes him more valuable. The Seahawks, they need help in the secondary with the releases of. They released Richard Sherman. Obviously, they released a couple other cornerbacks that were on their roster that had some playing time last season. So there's definitely a need there. Josh Jackson could be taken into consideration, but I think they need the most help on the offensive line. I mean, Russell Wilson the past 2 years has been scrambling for his life. And he's carrying this team in all reality. This roster needs some work. They need to add some pieces around Russell Wilson, who is a top 5 quarterback, but they cannot afford for him to take as many hits as he has these past couple seasons. If not, he's going to end up getting injured, and once he gets injured, he's going to continue to get injured if that offensive line is not solidified, if he doesn't have a legitimate players, right, or very good players, protecting him. Man, you need to take care of your franchise quarterback. I think that should be the first thing that the Seattle Seahawks address in this draft. I think it'll be the smart thing to do to keep Russell Wilson healthy, and make sure that your franchise quarterback is ready to go for next season, with a very good offensive line. Now, at number 19, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting Calvin Ridley. Now, I think the pick here would have been Rashaan Evans. I have the Chargers taking him, obviously. They released Dez Bryant. They brought in Allen Hurns, but he's not a legitimate number one option. I think he's better as a number 2, the way he was in Jacksonville with Allen Robinson as the true number 1 option. So I think you get your number 1 option in Calvin Ridley, the best receiver, or the most polished receiver in this draft, the best route runner, very good at creating separation. I think it'll serve Dak Prescott well to get a guy that can consistently get open and make it easier on him to be able to deliver those throws and have another playmaker alongside Allen Hurns. So I have them drafting Calvin Ridley. I think it will serve them well to have another playmaker, a guy, that can make plays once he gets the ball in his hands. Although he didn't really get to show that in Alabama with how much they run the football. Jalen Hurts, quarterback that loved to run the football. So we didn't really get to see, him with a legitimate quarterback throwing him the ball and the ridiculous stats that I think he would have put up at Alabama. But I think he's a good fit for Dallas. I do think his attitude, right, there's no off the field concerns, there's no character issues. He really is a model player and a very good guy that I think Jason Garrett would love to have in that locker room. So Calvin Ridley's the pick for Dallas at number 19. At number 20, I have the Detroit Lions selecting Will Hernandez. Will Hernandez, I do think, is the second best guard in this draft. He's a guy that has skyrocketed up draft boards since the end of the college season, since we got to see him a bit more at the Senior Bowl. A very good showing there. He showed that he's very physical, very strong, very good footwork, and he's a very good athlete for his size. He's about 6'2", 300 plus pounds, and people his size, shouldn't move the way he does, but he's very athletic, very mobile, very light on his feet. The Detroit Lions need a lot of help on the interior of that line. They haven't been able to get a consistent run game going. I do think that it does have to do with the running backs that they have, but now they have a very physical runner in LeGarrette Blount, a nice complementary back in Amir Abdullah. Those two guys I think can make for a very good tandem, a very productive tandem. But they need to solidify that interior to be able to open up those holes, especially for LeGarrette Blount, who loves running up the gut, running up the middle. So I think Will Hernandez is the pick there. He's a guy that I think can make an immediate impact on that offensive line, and be one of the anchors on that line for years to come. So I have the Lions taking Will Hernandez at number 20. At number 21, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting James Daniels, the center out of Iowa. They lost their starting center from last season, and Russell Bodine, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. There's a hole at the center spot. James Daniels is a guy that I think you can plug in, and he can make an impact. I think he can be a solid starter for years to come. I don't think he has the same potential as a guy like Quentin Nelson or even a Will Hernandez, but he's a very, very solid player, very polished as well. And Iowa has a history of producing some very, very good offensive linemen. I think Cincinnati gets a stud that they can hold down the center position for years to come, and make the job easier, right, for whoever's taking snaps under center. If it's Andy Dalton or their quarterback of the future, I think James Daniels will be there and do a very nice job for them. Now at number 22, I have the Denver Broncos selecting Isaiah Wynn, the guard out of Georgia. Now Isaiah Wynn is another guy that has skyrocketed up draft boards. Had a very impressive showing at Senior Bowl, and also in the college football playoff when we saw him really hold his own against that monster of an interior line that Alabama has. Monster defensive front, with Deshaun Hand, Deron Payne, and all those guys on there. He did an excellent job of helping keep that pocket clean for freshman quarterback Jake Fromm. So he's a guy, and Denver needs, some help on the interior. Isaiah Wynn is another guy that you can plug in, and he can be a solid starter on that team immediately and for years to come as well. So I have Isaiah Wynn being the pick for the Denver Broncos at number 22. At number 23, I have the Washington Redskins selecting Deron Payne out of Alabama, a very, very disruptive playmaker. And I think, in my opinion, I think he is better than Vita Vea, although I have Vita Vea going higher. And the reason why I say that is because I think he is a guy that will be much better rushing the quarterback, much more explosive, much quicker coming off the line. I think he's going to be very disruptive on the interior. He's going to be a defensive tackle that's going to be able to get you 8 to 12 sacks consistently. I do think he has that potential. He's a monster, had a monster showing, in the college football playoffs, in the game against Clemson, and in the national championship against Georgia. Just a very, very good player. And we all know, the defensive line talent, or the defensive talent in general, whether it be the secondary and the linebackers, or on the defensive front, the edge rushers and the tackles, they produce some legitimate talent on that defense. The Redskins got Jonathan Allen last year, who was a steal for them, and then they plug in Deron Payne on the interior. I think it's going to make for a very, very good defensive front that already has, Ryan Kerrigan coming off the edge. They were one of the worst rushing defenses last season, and I think it's going to help them a lot because he can play against the run, be disruptive against the run, but he's going to be able to get some sacks and get some pressure on the quarterback. At number 24, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting Justin Reed, the safety out of Stanford. Justin Reed is, like I keep saying, another guy that has climbed up draft boards, and rightfully so. He's very polished, has a knack for being able to make plays, very long, very rangy. And if you look at the Carolina Panthers, they need some help in the secondary. They lost one of their safeties in Kirk Coleman, and I think Justin Reed has extreme amounts of potential if developed correctly. And you've seen the players that have come out of Carolina. You saw Josh Norman had his best seasons there. I think the system they run is very, very good, and is very, or excels in being able to get the best out of those players in the secondary at the safety positions and at the corner position. So it'll be a good fit for Justin Reed. I think he can go in there, start immediately, and be one of the leaders on that defense who needs a lot of help in that secondary at the moment. Now, number 25, I have the Tennessee Titans going Harold Landry. Now, they were actually one of the most consistent in being able to get pressures and hits and sacks on the quarterbacks last season. I think another edge rusher will do them well to really put that front over the top. Harold Landry is a guy that at one time was garnering top 10, was in the top 10 conversation. As the season progressed, didn't really produce as much as we expected him to, didn't have the season that we thought he was going to have. But he's still very, very disruptive. He's another guy that's long, right, that's quick off the line, and very, very good when it comes to being able to get after the quarterback. I think Tennessee adds him. They plug him in right away, and he's going to make that defensive front that was already really good at getting to the quarterback, even better. So I like the pick of that, of Harold Landry going to the Tennessee Titans. Now, number 26, I have the Atlanta Falcons taking Taven Bryan, the defensive tackle out of Florida. I think Taven Bryan is a very, very good player. I do think he has one of the highest ceilings of the defensive tackles, of all the defensive tackles in the entire draft. He has garnered a lot of attention, right, because of his measurables, because of his length, because of his physicality, and a lot of people are even going as far as to compare him to J.J. Watt. I don't think he's as explosive. I don't think he's as talented as being able to get to the rusher as J.J. Watt. And I don't think there will ever be another J.J. Watt, a guy that was consistently being double-teamed before Jadeveon Clowney arrived, before Whitney Merciless emerged. Guy that was consistently being double-teamed and constantly, he was the focal point of the other team's game plan. Being able to stop J.J. Watt was how you were going to be able to neutralize that defense and being able to move the ball on them. And it was hard to do. He's a Hall of Famer by far, and one of the best defensive ends that we have ever seen, arguably the best defensive end, although I'm not sure he has surpassed Lawrence Taylor, but he's up there in that conversation when healthy. So that's a very big comparison, especially because I think that Taven Bryan is a defensive tackle, not a defensive end. I don't think he's as good, being able to get to the quarterback. He's not as explosive, like I said earlier, but he has a lot of potential. He's very disruptive against the run. He's long. He's physical. He is going to be able to bring that intensity, right, that aggression on the interior, be able to get to the quarterback on the inside. With the loss of Dontari Poe, there's a hole at the defensive tackle spot, and Taven Bryan fits it, especially if Deron Payne is not there, who I know is at the top of their board. I think Taven Bryan's the next best pick for them. Now, number 27, I have the New Orleans Saints taking Mike Gesicki. Now, that's a very tough pick to predict because I know they need help at the tight end spot. Another playmaker for Drew Brees. They can potentially go DJ Moore. They need another playmaker aside Michael Thomas. Especially with the loss of Willie Snead, but if you can get a big physical guy like Mike Gesicki who tore up the combine, as fast as he runs for his size, I think he's like 6'6", around that, very, very fast, very athletic, a very, very good pass-catching tight end. Doesn't necessarily block as well as a lot of teams would like for him to do, but he's going to be a guy that I think he has the potential to be a top 5 tight end, and I'm going to go out on the line and say that, just the explosiveness, the route-running ability, the hands that he has, the ability to be able to go up there and make plays. I think it'll be helpful for Drew Brees. Now they would like to add, a quarterback via this draft to groom, during these final seasons of Drew Brees because he's already going to be 40. I think he's 39. He's getting up there in age. It's already getting to the point where he's going to go, or he's already on the tail end of his career. But he's still very productive, and I think to make a push for another Super Bowl, right, you need to add playmakers around him, and Mike Gesicki is a guy that fills a need, and I think he's the best tight end of that respect position. So I have the Saints taking Mike Gesicki. Now, number 28, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Leighton Vander Esch, the linebacker out of Boise State, who really had a breakout year this past season. It fills a need, with what happened to Ryan Shazier. I'm praying for him. I hope he does come back. He's on the road to recovery after nearly being paralyzed. It fills a need. Vander Esch is very good against the run. He does lack in, he's not as good in coverage, as Rashaan Evans and as Raquan Smith, or even as good as Tremaine Edmonds in coverage. but very good at making plays against the run. Very physical, very explosive. Very smart, very intelligent player. I do like that fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it'll be a heck of a pickup. I do think he has, tons of potential, to be a very, very good middle linebacker at the next level. Now at number 29, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting DJ Moore, the wide receiver out of Maryland, who is another guy that has climbed up draft boards, and could potentially be the first wide receiver taken if the Dallas Cowboys, or another team that needs a wide receiver, decides to pick him over Calvin Ridley. He's very explosive, very good at making plays once the ball is in his hand. Can make plays down the field, can make plays, on the inside of the field, running the slants, running the drags, and then running go routes as well, can go up there and get the football. He measured in at about 6'1", I think, which was higher than a lot of teams were expecting him to measure in at. So it only added, or it only improved his draft stock. So I have the Jaguars taking him. They released Allen Hurns. They let Allen Robinson walk in free agency. He's now a Chicago Bear. So they have a need for a true number one wide receiver. Keelan Cole is a very good playmaker. I think he was a rookie last year. Dede Westbrook, another rookie who showed that he can be a productive receiver, more so in the slot. So they need someone that can be on the outside, that can make plays and be that number one receiving option for Blake Bortles, and I think DJ Moore is that guy. I think they elect to take DJ Moore. I think it'll be a very good fit for them, a very good playmaker for them, and continue to add to this already stacked roster. So I have DJ Moore going to the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 29. And number 30, I have the Minnesota Vikings selecting Billy Price, the center/guard out of Ohio State. I think he's one of the more polished interior linemen in this draft. His versatility, right, the fact that he's able to play center and guard makes him even more valuable. He suffered that injury. I think it was a pectoral injury, and the combine didn't get to participate in all the drills. But he's expected to be ready for training camp, which kind of relieves some of the questions or some of the concerns that a lot of teams had with him going into the draft. I do think he's a first-round talent. Minnesota needs to solidify the interior of that offensive line, or at least improve it, to make sure that Kirk Cousins has a clean pocket to throw in. They have playmakers at receivers. The running back group is set. The defense is set. So the next thing to do is to solidify that offensive line, and I think they get Billy Price. At number 31, I have the Washington Redskins selecting cornerback Josh Jackson out of Iowa. Now, there's a very good possibility that he doesn't slip to number 31 to the Redskins. Obviously this is via trade down with the New England Patriots, so there's a good chance that he's not here. But the way things, panned out in this mock draft, he's there. I think the Redskins take him. There's a need, at the cornerback spot opposite of Josh Norman. They lost Brashad Breeland. And Josh Jackson has a knack for being able to find the football and being able to make plays and turn the ball over. I think he led the nation this past season in interceptions. I may be wrong, but there was he's had a few monster games. I think he had a 3-interception game against Ohio State this past season. So just very good. There's concerns about his press coverage, right? His ability to man up at the line of scrimmage and be physical with receivers, but there's no denying the fact that he's very good at causing turnovers, and being disruptive in the passing game. And I think he's going to be a very, very good corner at the next level. I think he's the second best corner in this draft, right up there with Denzel Ward. I think you can make the conversation that he is the best, but ultimately I think Denzel Ward goes first. He's here for the Washington Redskins to take. They get a very good playmaker that could potentially take over that number one cornerback spot, once Josh Norman gets up there in age and things like that. But it's going to make for a much improved secondary to add Josh Jackson to that roster. Now with the final pick, I have the reigning defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles getting their running back in Darius Guice. Now they lost LeGarrette Blount. They did trade for Jay Ajayi, but there are some injury concerns surrounding him. I think if you get Darius Guice, you get a guy that could be the workhorse. You know what I mean? He's a guy that's so underrated in the passing game, but he's very, very crafty. His footwork is good. His vision is very, very good. A very physical runner. And it'll be a surprise to me to see him slip this far But I think it will happen because a lot of teams have other needs than the running back spot, and also there's that philosophy that almost all teams have, that you can get a good running back later in the draft, obviously, and Kareem Hunt, Alvin Kamara's, all those support that philosophy. So, but I think the Philadelphia Eagles take Darius Guice, the best player available. He's a guy that on my big board, he's a top 20 player. And for him to be available at number 32, I think it'll serve well for the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that doesn't necessarily have a lot of holes like the Minnesota Vikings. So they take best player available. Darius Guice is there. I think he's their guy. They've shown interest in him, and that'll be a very, very smart pick and a probably the steal of the draft if that were to happen. But this is how I have it playing out. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I'm going to be coming out with my draft grades for all 32 teams, once the draft is over, and continue to pump out some NFL content, get consistent with that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, subscribe if you haven't already, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the draft.